Ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, if you have not already, please download the app for the Bulldog Show and subscribe to it on YouTube. You can check us out on all our platforms. I begin, as always, with some Trump news. Trump said yesterday that he believes every member of the executive branch should be able to be fired by the president when he comes into office. And you know what? They should be. That's how you get rid of the career swamps. Now, here's what he's saying. Just think about this. All of the executive departments, transportation, so forth and so on, the Justice Department, he ought to be able, every president ought to come in and be able to replace anybody he wants with his own team. Now, from a practical standpoint, that would never happen. There would be some continuity. Every president would know that they said, well, we got to keep some people. But that would destroy this permanent federal swamp that we've created in Washington, D.C. It's a smart move. Mark Levin, the great one as they like to call him, and he calls himself, I think, said that Trump was a genius, a foreign policy genius. And of course he was. How many times have you heard me say that dealing with these tyrants, dictators, and bad actors, there's a fine line between being friendly and letting them know they better not get out of line. Trump did that exactly the way it should be done. Exactly. Never threatening to them in a way that would make them go off, at the same time getting along with them, but by golly, they knew to straighten up. I mean, and in just one short year, all of that diplomacy is destroyed by Joe Biden and Kamala Laugh-O-Matic Harris. Zelensky's been invited to address a joint session of Congress by Zoom. Now, I just want everyone to know that I'm a Zelensky fan like everybody else. But this falls right down the middle of what Tucker Carlson said about the diversion of all of our domestic problems, which, by the way, it's not going to work. It's an attempted diversion of all of our domestic issues with this Ukrainian war. Schumer and Pelosi want this to happen. You have to ask yourself, why? Because everybody wants to wrap themselves around Zelensky and the Ukrainian war to get away from our domestic issues. It's not going to work. By the way, I'm all for all of us being supportive of Zelensky. But these political gangsters always have a motivation that is solely political in nature, not for the betterment of our country. Always. I wrote this woman's name down because I want to honor her, and I'm going to try to pronounce it the best I can. Sometimes, if you notice, I don't mention somebody's name. Sometimes that is for brevity's sake. Sometimes it's because I don't know who the heck it is. Marina Ovsyannikova. Marina Ovsyannikova is the brave woman who went on Russian state television with that sign that said, "Stop the war, don't believe propaganda." Incredible bravery. She, of course, has been arrested. She's probably dead by now. But what an incredible, brave woman. I don't know about you, but I get so tired of these empty threats. My new nickname for Sleepy Joe is Empty Threat Joe and Laugh-O-Matic Harris. Psaki said that if China were to give Russia weapons or be involved in any way, shape, or form, there would be significant consequences. How many times have we heard this baloney of significant consequences and threats, which goes nowhere? Over and over and over again, right? It just gets tiring. And ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, when you go back in time, and I think I'm going to do a separate show about this, of the relationships between Russia, China, the Biden administration, the Obama administration, it's just unbelievable what they've wrought. Musk versus Putin. You got to love this. Musk challenged Putin to single combat for Ukraine. Now, it was done obviously in jest, but it was also funny and poignant. By the way, if you ever watched the movie Troy, you will know what we're talking about. Remember, very beginning of the movie, Achilles fights the other country's leading warrior, wins, and takes the country, so nobody else has to die. Single combat. If only it could work this way. By the way, remember, I am somebody, and I'm being serious about this. I don't say this in jest. Dueling has been outlawed in this country for a long, long time, and the concept behind dueling being outlawed is because it could result in the death of somebody. But if you go back to the whole honor code of dueling, it was when somebody violated the honor of someone else. And those two people could either talk it out and avoid the duel, or they could both go on the field of honor, both shoot in the sky, not actually shoot each other, or they could have a duel. Now, if we were to allow dueling to happen, I personally believe that there would be a lot less of the mouthing off by morons in this country. I mean, dueling. It was a matter of honor. You know, it was a gentleman's thing, of all things. It really was. So I'm just saying, I think Musk bringing up single combat is hysterical. And by the way, you talk about dogging Putin, because Putin would immediately think, his ego's like, hey, I'm Mr. Judo Man. You really think you could beat me? Musk might have to up his personal security. There's a poll that says Americans have no confidence Biden will stop the war from spreading. Shouldn't shock anybody. Romney versus Gabbard. Romney went after Tulsi Gabbard using the word treason and everything else. Well, it turns out he was wrong. Everything Tulsi Gabbard said about bioweapon plants in Ukraine is true, validated. She's now calling for Romney's apology and resignation. You know what cracks me up all the time, and I've watched this in the political arena, these political nimrods, is nobody ever admits mistakes. George Bush, 43, would never admit a mistake every time he made one. No, none of these people ever admit a mistake, and they never say they're sorry. And you know why? It's the political nimrods around them. And what those political nimrods don't understand is everybody else in the world, in the country, would warm to such actions. When a politician said, I made a mistake there, rather than everybody say, he admitted a mistake, most people would say, well, good for him, he admitted it was a mistake. Or they would say, well, you know what, at least he tried. Think about this, what Joe Biden would take the complete wind out of the Republican sails if he were to say, you know what, I was wrong about this energy policy. I'm reversing course. We're going to get the Keystone Pipeline going on, blah, blah, blah. I was wrong about the immigration policy. We're going to build that wall, blah. Can you imagine how he just takes that off the table? How bad a politics is it that politicians never apologize or admit a mistake? For me, for example, I admitted it was a mistake late in the campaign that I said, you know what, Bevin has pissed me off so much. By the way, remember, I had a personal beef with him. It was very personal. I admit, I said, my problem with Bevin isn't just the way he is, but it's a personal beef. And I said, I'm going to vote for Bashir. I have publicly apologized for that mistake. I would have rather had crazy Bashir and all his personal affronts to me, Bevin, than Andy Bashir. But politicians don't do it. They think that's a bad thing. It's not. It's called being a human being. Putin's wrath. Putin apparently is so angry at how things are going in Ukraine, he's now taking it out on his generals and his strategists. I'd hate to be the general who said we could take Ukraine in 48 hours. Biden held a fundraiser with rich Democratic donors. And you know what his focus was? Climate change. Climate change. These people are just evil, delusionalist globalists. The View believes that Tucker Carlson should be arrested for his comments. Arrested, that he's a traitor. The View. Who watches The View? TikTok. They have actually engaged, this Biden administration engaged TikTok influencers to blame the gas prices on Ukraine. You know what the big problem with that, the American public? Two things. Number one, gas prices were going through the roof before the Ukrainian invasion. Number two, Biden let the Ukrainian invasion happen. So it's all on him. They're not going to get away with it, but they're trying like hell. Texas has decided that they are going to build the wall themselves, no matter what Joe Biden administration says. Good for them. This Democrat congressman, I think from New Jersey, Malinowski, says all these parents out there in this war against critical race theory and everything going on in education is made up cultural BS. He said bullshit. There's a poll. Americans believe the coronavirus lifting of restrictions is political and not science. See, the American public is fickle. You can snowball them for a while, but then they wake up, and they're waking up. Inflation. Americans believe Republicans can fix it 47% to the Democrats 30%. That's a 20% gap. How do you think that plays out if that maintains its polling numbers in November? Majority of Americans, over 60%, support Florida's kindergarten to third grade law that you cannot deal with gender and racist identity politics. You can't mess with kids. How sick is it that we need a law to stop that? This is an example how once upon a time in America, you didn't need a law for things because most people just did the right thing. Kyrie Irving, the Nets were fined $50,000 for letting him in the locker room. He couldn't play because of New York City's vax issue. He could attend the game, but he can't go in the locker room, but he can play in other cities. And guess what? Kevin Durant threw down on Eric Adams, the New York City mayor, and the New York City mayor said he can play, just get vaxxed. The absurdity of these things. And don't think it doesn't help the Republicans when you have NBA basketball players saying this is absurd. Last but not least, I'm giving Oracle status to Dolly Partin. Dolly Partin was nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She withdrew her nomination. She said, I don't want to be nominated. And this wonderful statement said, you know, I've always kind of wanted to do a rock and roll album, and I hope I'm worthy one day. Maybe I will do that, but I don't want to take votes away from anybody else. I will not ever understand. By the way, just to let you know, I like some rap music. I don't understand how the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame shifted over, and they got pop acts now. They got what's considered a country act. They got the jazz acts. They've got the, I understand those a little bit more, the rap acts. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame should be the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There ought to be a pop Hall of Fame. You know, Dolly Partin, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's not very it's not very rock cool to me. But Dolly Partin, class act always. This is the Bulldog. Every dog has their day. I hope today is yours.